In this video, we're going through 15 of the most interesting secrets, Easter eggs, and hidden details that Bungie snuck into Final Shape, and I guarantee no matter how much you play this game, you're going to learn something new in this video. We've got a lot to talk about. Not many people realize what the Witness's body fully looks like and how big and strange it is. This dev image shows how the Witness is actually like a giant serpent, much longer than the top bit that you see at the end of the raid. Some even believe the entire raid structure could be its body that we all just fight inside, because its body does look identical to what we see at the very bottom entering the raid. It's hard to tell which parts might be separate from the monolith and where the Witness's body begins, but an interesting detail most people miss is right after you defeat the Witness, if you quickly look down, there's an animation where it actually severs itself off from this long tail. So the top bit that's severed escapes to where you go face in the 12-player mission as this floating body. But in the raid, if you look down, you can see the stump that's been cut off from the rest of its tail. In most of the Witness concept art from Bungie, it is designed to be as a kind of serpent or snake or worm that kind of wraps around the whole encounter, and in a lot of them, the body physically is the raid that you're actually traversing. So Bungie has always had the idea of the Witness being this gigantic long snake. A Bungie dev did say that the whole monolith isn't the Witness's body, so it's hard to tell where the Witness begins in all this, and I think it's kind of designed to be a bit vague. Like in this image, the snake and the structure are kind of merged, so I think it's meant to be hard to tell what's the Witness and what's the monolith, but either way, it is the largest enemy and character in Destiny history, way bigger than Riven and Oryx. And also down in the second encounter, you can see this black tree branch that runs up through the hole in the sky, and this actually goes all the way up to become the platform that you stand on to do damage. So it's like the tree branches from the Traveler and the Witness kind of extend through most of the raid all the way up. Something hilarious that's in the final campaign mission is that when the Vanguard shows up to help, Cade and Crow can actually friendly fire kill you if you get in the way of their shots. After you break the second statue and the Vanguard arrive, for some reason, if you get in the way of Cade or Crow when they're shooting at the Grims, they will one-shot you. What's even more funny is it shows in the top right that you got killed by Crow with a hand cannon because he's using the Hawk Moon, of course, and Cade with his Ace of Spades, and it doesn't even say Architects or Misadventure like it normally does. It won't work with Ikora or Zavala. They're using auto rifles that don't do any damage to you for some reason, but the Hunters and these hand cannons will one-tap you no problem. It's something players have been asking for to fight alongside these characters properly, and they do decent damage to the Dread, but they also infinitely spawn, so it doesn't make a huge difference. It's more kind of aesthetic purposes, but definitely be careful getting in the way of Cade or Crow. Something you see a lot in Final Shape and anything to do with the Traveler is this bird. It's in the cutscenes, it guides you through the Pale Heart, it leads you to the cysts, and there are feathers everywhere to collect. This actually has a lot of significance that very cleverly ties into things Bungie showed us many years ago. So the bird, which is a hawk, is how the Traveler communicates to us in dreams or visions, and it was first seen back in 2017, the original Destiny 2 campaign. Right as you lose your light and Ghoul puts the Traveler in a cage, you get this vision from the Traveler in this cutscene, which is very similar to the one we just got in Final Shape, where there's a white bird giving you a message. It shows you the collapse with the darkness and the pyramids and how we need to use the new at the time subclasses, and it tells us to go to the Shard of the Traveler to get our light back. Whereas in the Final Shape, it also starts with this white bird with the feathers. It shows the Traveler first creating ghosts and terraforming Mars and creating life. Then the Witness corruption takes over, starting to kill everything and trapping the bird with this kind of poisonous black fluid. And the astronaut is then using the 5 elements plus prismatic to fight back. So it's the same message of the Traveler bird showing us to use these powers to stop the collapse or the Witness. And there's also this Bungie concept art from the early version of this 2017 cutscene, which shows the bird covered in this black corruption like sticky fluid. This didn't make the final version, but you can see it is identical to the new Final Shape cutscene where the bird is also trapped and consumed. The bird was also in the Hawk Moon mission in 2021, where you have to follow the Hawk exactly the same way as you do in the Pale Heart. And that mission is all about how the Traveler started speaking to Crow through these visions and dreams with this bird. So now you know its significance and why you see it everywhere. Inside the Pale Heart, you'll find these strange floating objects, which are actually references to the Marathon logo, of course, of Bungie's upcoming game. Bungie's actually been putting these marathon-shaped lamps in Destiny 2 for the last couple of years. You'll find them all over the Val raid in Witch Queen and also in Lightfall around any pyramid structure. And again, in the Final Shape, they're teasing this logo of the upcoming reboot. There have been way more obvious logos, like in the Xenophage ornament, which is very clearly slapped all over it, and the 30th anniversary pack we got as those armor sets inspired by Marathon characters. This was just before they announced it, and it's something Bungie have always done. Every Halo game has had loads of Marathon logos in it, very similar to how they are doing now. And of course, just like how they put a Destiny Easter egg in Halo ODST with that poster of Earth with the Traveler saying Destiny awaits. So it looks like Bungie is still following the theme of referencing future games in their current ones. The cool sidearm has absolutely dominated the final shape. It's one of the most used weapons for good reason. It's unbelievably powerful, easy to use and easy to get. But what's interesting is that this weapon wasn't initially a rocket sidearm, and at some point Bungie changed it. In the final shape reveal, it can be seen originally as a regular sidearm, firing normal rounds that you can shoot super quickly, and it did strand damage, the same as it does now, but it was a regular sidearm, not a rocket one. In the showcase, Bungie announced the new rocket sidearm archetype with the Indebted Kindness that came out in Warlord's Ruin, the dungeon, but it's crazy to imagine if this stayed as a regular sidearm, it would be completely forgotten about. And a fun fact is that its model is actually based off of the first ever sidearm in the game, in Destiny history, the Vestian Dynasty you might remember from Destiny 1, House of Wolves, and then it was also reintroduced in Forsaken. So if it looks familiar, it's actually based off of the first OG sidearm. In this cutscene at the end of the Final Shape campaign, you can see Crow pulls out a giant axe to fight the Witness's hands with, which does seem quite random. A lot of people are wondering, why does he suddenly have this axe? Where did he get it from? Why does nobody else use an axe? Like, why is this just appearing now? This is actually a very clever reference to Season of the Risen, which was alongside Witch Queen in 2022. It wasn't the most memorable season, but at the end, Saladin actually gave Crow this axe, which is why he used it now in Final Shape. So in the Season of the Risen story, they were doing experiments on captured Hive with one of Keitel's scions hooked up to a machine. Crow tried to save the Hive because he felt sorry for them, but ended up killing all of them, including the scion that was very important to Keitel. She wasn't very happy about it and insisted on taking the Crow's life to make them even, but Saladin offered to join Keitel to go work for her and make them even and save Crow. So after he did that, Saladin left a message saying that he was going to leave his axe for Crow as a gift. So it's a very cool callback and explains why he has it in this cutscene. Bungie did it for a very specific reason. In Final Shape, the director screen has some subtle details that you may have missed in the first week of its launch. Before the raid came out and the Witness was still trying to enact the Final Shape and the darkness was everywhere, you can actually see these darkness patterns surrounding the Traveler, and it blocked out the sun, so its glow isn't there anymore. This is a callback to an opening cutscene in Destiny 1 where the speaker is talking about the collapse, and you can see the darkness as these swirly tendrils that take over the system, and this ancient enemy comes for the Traveler. So this was the first collapse, and now in the Final Shape it's happening again. Later on, right before the raid comes out, it gets even darker and you can see them closing in, which represents the Final Shape and the collapse being even closer. Then after raid and excision is beaten and the Witness is destroyed, they go away completely and the sun's light can be seen returning again. So this is what we all see now. This is the regular director screen, but it's a cool detail how for that week you could see the darkness surrounding and closing in on the Traveler and even blocking out the sun until we stopped the Witness for good and it cleared up. Liminality is one of the most interesting strikes in the game, and it has a ton of cool details and also Easter eggs. I actually did a live stream with Bife that was sponsored by Bungie where we went through all the lore and secrets in here, because you only play the strike once in the campaign and it is quite rare to show up in the playlist, so it's easy to miss what's going on here, and there are so many hidden details. One of the biggest things is the Ahamkara all throughout this strike, because as far as we know, the Witness doesn't have any connection to them, but this implies otherwise, because this whole strike is made off of the Dissenters' memories. So how could they have memories of the Ahamkara if they haven't met before? The final boss is the Tormentor of the Ahamkara, and he's of course in front of this giant skull. There are several skulls throughout that you need to activate with taken energy. You'd also find the frozen Ahamkara body parts like this claw. There's actually a whole intact body preserved in this part, which is one of the few times we see one in full. And there's also sections where we see guts all inside the walls. Some cool Easter eggs in these side rooms is that this one, Bungie actually inspired off of Indiana Jones movies where you have to pick up the artifact or relic and then run through this tight passage while the walls collapse and these obstacles jump over. And this room later on is based off of Star Wars Episode 4, the famous trash compactor scene, and again you have these lava walls that are closing in slowly where you have to escape. There's some cool movie references there. One of the most interesting rooms is actually the homeworld of the Witness's precursors. It does look very much inspired off of the ancient Roman city of Pompeii that got buried in lava when Vesuvius erupted. If you walk around the buildings, it looks very similar with the Roman architecture and buildings, and there's even a tablet with Latin text. And of course, as you progress, the city gets buried in lava later on. So it kind of has a similar feel, and this room was designed to be like an ancient city of a lost civilization. There's also, of course, the pyramid, which very much seems like ancient Egypt. Normally we see the pyramid ships, but this is just a regular one, which looks like it could be what they base the ships off of. Behind it down here is this pile of bodies, which is actually what we saw in the Witness's Origins cutscenes, where they all sacrificed themselves and merged to become the Witness. So this again is its memory being manifested. If you look up the definition of the word liminality, it means the ambiguity in the middle of a rite of passage where participants are no longer their pre-ritual status but have not yet become what they will after the ritual is complete. So it sounds exactly like these dissenters are becoming the Witness, and this strike is kind of like a purgatory between the two phases. So super interesting lore-wise. But thanks again to Bungie for sponsoring the live stream we did and this video. It was a lot of fun exploring the secrets, and if you still don't have Final Shape yet, there's a link in the description if you want to check it out. Inside the Pale Heart, you'll find lots of weird shapes and symbols in the geometry, and in the landing there's actually some cool ones, which are the 3 class animals. So over here, the Warlock's Eagle is very easy to spot. You can see it very big here, but beyond that, in this mountain behind it is actually the Titan's Lion, which is a lot more subtle, and then even more hard to see above that, on the top of this rock, is the Hunter's Snake. Its head is made out of rock. You can see its mouth is open, and its body is made out of this blue crystal. It kind of transforms, but its body is all kind of wrapped around the mountain. If you go through the cave, you can see the other parts of its body and tail. So it's a cool detail. You can see the 3 class animals carved into this scenery. And also another one is over in the cave. You can see the Speaker's Mask, of course, but these are just some of the many weird things you'll find all over the Pale Heart. In the opening cinematic of Final Shape, you can see a lot of weird stuff happens. Everything in the city gets transformed and sliced into these statues. You see the whole earth is somewhat destroyed and turned into these blocks, but the cutscene is quite confusing. A lot of people aren't sure what really happened here. Was this some kind of dream or vision of the Traveler? Was this like a prediction of the future, or did this really happen? But this actually was real. For a few seconds, the Witness did enact the Final Shape, and the Earth was destroyed. We got to see what would happen if the Final Shape did come true, but what happened is the Traveler stopped it by fighting back and reversing it. Where the Witness is in this scene is actually the end of the raid where that takes place, with the floating blocks that circle the top of the monolith. You'll recognize this is the jumping puzzle area right before the final encounter, so this is where that is. But here the Witness actually achieves its goal. For a very short moment it did win, but then you hear the Traveler making that crying noise and there's a flash of light. The Witness is saying you're still resisting, and he's talking to the Traveler here, so even though it is subdued and very weak and unable to do much, it still has enough power to stop the Final Shape and stall the Witness until we show up. So after this, the Vanguard decides to go into the portal, and then all the events of the campaign happen, and then the raid, and then Excision. So this stops the Final Shape for good, and this scene of the Earth being sliced up was real. It did actually happen, but the Traveler reversed it. Inside the Final Shape raid, you'll find some very unique statues that can't be found anywhere else. Unlike all the others, these are in a different pose, actually holding up the entire raid monolith. These look inspired by Atlas in Greek mythology, who is punished by Zeus to hold up the entire world, and here it's like the Witness has punished these dissenters to hold up the monolith. For over 5 years, we've seen these mysterious statues all over Destiny 2, but only in Final Shape they were revealed to of course be dissenters and precursors from the Witness's race. We first saw them in Shadowkeep in 2019 when Bungie introduced the pyramids, but we never knew what they were. But even before that, the very first time we technically saw them was in 2017 in Destiny 2's launch. This weird concept art was in the loading screen while you install the game, and you can see the first statue and how long Bungie have been planning them. We still don't know what this concept art was meant to show, and probably never will. I think it's just meant to be like a pyramid homeworld and where they came from. But the statues always have the same pose. You'll never find any other type of statues until these ones in the raid, which you can see are much bigger. These are massive. And of course, they're holding their arms up, unlike the others where they've got their arms by their side. And you can see this concept art from Bungie designer Aaron Cruz of what different versions look like. But it's a really interesting detail because we've never seen any other kind of statues. Something a lot of people still don't know is that Rahul had some pretty big changes with how you decrypt engrams. So when you get exotics, if you go up and decode them the same usual way we've always done for the past 10 years, you're actually losing out on a ton of XP. If you're wondering how people seem to hit max rank and reset so quickly, it's because there are other ways to decode exotics now, but Bungie doesn't actually explain this in-game or anywhere. It's a very subtle change. But decoding them the normal way will only get you 150 XP, which isn't much, but if you exit out of that, in the focus decoding, you can select the advanced decryption for legacy gear, of course, but then the precision decryption, these give you 500 XP, which is massive. It costs exotic shards, which is the trade-off, but more importantly, you can hit max rank so much quicker, which is the thing a lot of people don't pay attention to. It's easy to miss. The amount you get is drastically different depending on how you decode these exotics. And again, it's something that Bungie never explained in a blog post and definitely not in game, but there are much faster ways to rank up Rahul. One of the encounters in the Final Shape raid is so complex that Bungie developers admitted they didn't even fully understand how it worked. Salvation's Edge is definitely one of the hardest raids in Destiny history. It's very mechanics based, but the fourth encounter, Verity, is a whole nother level. Ben Womack, the combat area lead at Bungie, said that some of the developers actually working on the encounter didn't fully understand its workings, which is kind of funny and speaks more to just how complicated this encounter is. Obviously, lots of developers don't need to know how to do the whole thing gameplay-wise. Some might be working on lighting or the environment or the spawns or the sound. It's like if you work in a rocket factory, you don't need to know how to fly the thing. You're only responsible for your specific job and thing that you do. So it makes sense. Playtesters are the ones that would need to know how to test and play all the mechanics. But I think this encounter, explaining it, does make it seem harder than it actually is. The moth-infested cavern is one of the most hated parts of the Final Shape. I've seen so many complaints about these moths, which are coded differently to be way more difficult to shoot than the regular Lucent Hive moths. But there is a very easy way to take them out that I don't see many people talk about. For some reason, these moths specifically have tiny hitboxes and are really, really annoying. But if you use a projectile weapon like the cool rocket sidearm, this makes it super easy. Even from a mile away, you don't even have to be right on it. This just zaps them even before they activate. It's not a weapon you would think would be good against them, and a lot of people try fast firing weapons that can spray and hope to hit them, like Risk Runner lets you sponge the arc damage, but once again, the Call proves itself to be the best weapon in the game. There is nothing it can't do. So if you're struggling with these annoying moths, next time try the Call or any rocket sidearm. There's a really funny Easter egg in the Pale Heart Tower where if you go to this corner, you can faintly hear Paul McCartney's Hope for the Future playing distorted through the wall. Back in Destiny 1 at launch, Paul McCartney famously teamed up with Marty O'Donnell and Salvatore to make a song for Destiny, and later this was added into the jukebox in the hangar of this underground lounge area. You could have a dance party and listen to music. Then during the Red War in Destiny 2, you could hear it playing all messed up and the jukebox was obviously broken and kind of destroyed. So it's funny that again in Final Shape, Bungie added this detail where you can still hear the song playing even faintly, even though you can't go down there and access that part of the tower. And there is also a statue in the raid where you can hear the song playing as well. So this is an Easter egg that just seems to be keep coming back. Final Shape is packed with a ton of secrets and interesting details. I covered even more in a separate video, which you can click here to watch, talking about the secret alternate ending, future locations, even Destiny 3 and secret characters. Let me know in the comments if you guys know of any secrets or Easter eggs that I didn't cover, and if you learned something new in this video, a like rating would be much appreciated. But thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.